The link had been sitting in his inbox for 3 days before he gathered the courage to open it. It wasn't the kind of message you ignore by accident. It had no subject line, no name attached. Just a quiet insistence that lingered in the unread. Count like a heartbeat he refused to acknowledge. On the fourth night, sometime after midnight, when the world thinned out and even regrets softened their voices, he clicked it. The video opened without an ad, without a pause, as if it had been waiting for him specifically. The first frame was grainy, washed in a dull yellow light that reminded him of old rooms and older memories. For a moment he thought it was broken. Then he heard a voice. His breath stopped. It was her, not just similar, not close. It was her in the way you recognize a whisper even in a storm. The way certain sounds belong to someone so deeply that time cannot distort them. He leaned closer to the screen. "I don't know if you'll ever see this," she said, her voice trembling just slightly at the edges. "But if you do, it means something went wrong. Or maybe something finally went right." His fingers tightened around the phone. The room felt smaller. The walls pressed inward with the weight of 10 years. He had spent trying not to remember. She looked older, of course. Lines where there hadn't been any. A softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. But it was still her. Still the girl who had once laughed too loudly at his worst jokes. Who had believed in things with reckless certainty. Who had walked away without looking back. Or at least that's how he remembered it. He paused the video. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened screen. Older too, heavier with things he never said out loud. He thought about closing it, pretending he never saw it. Some doors once opened don't lead anywhere you can return from. But her voice echoed in his mind. If you do, it means something went wrong. He pressed play. "I've tried to write this 100 times, she continued, glancing away from the camera as if searching for words that refused to stay still. "I kept thinking I'd find a better way to explain, something clearer, kinder, but there isn't one." He swallowed. "You remember the night I left," she said. It wasn't a question. He did remember, not as a single moment, but as 1,000 fragments that had never settled into peace. The sound of the door closing, the silence afterward, the message she never replied to, the months that turned into years. "I told you I needed space," she said, "that I didn't know who I was anymore, that I couldn't breathe." He let out a quiet, bitter laugh. That had been her explanation, a handful of vague words that had felt like a knife wrapped in silk. "I lied," she said softly. The laugh died in his throat. The video seemed to tilt. Or maybe it was just his perception shifting under the weight of what she'd said. "I didn't leave because I was lost," she continued. "I left because I was afraid." He shook his head slowly, instinctively rejecting it. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of how much I loved you." The words hit him with a force he wasn't prepared for. He leaned back, as if distance could soften them. "That sounds stupid now," she added, with a faint, almost apologetic smile. "But back then, it felt like drowning, like I was disappearing into something I couldn't control." He remembered the intensity of those days, the way everything had felt amplified, urgent, as if every moment carried the weight of forever. He had thought that was love at its purest. She had seen it as something else. "I thought if I stayed," she said, her voice breaking just slightly, "I would lose myself completely, that I'd become someone whose entire world revolved around you. And I didn't know how to exist like that." He closed his eyes. All those years he had believed he wasn't enough. Now he was being told he had been too much. "I should have told you the truth," she went on. "I should have trusted you with it. But I didn't. I ran instead. I told myself it was the right thing, that one day you'd understand." He opened his eyes again, staring at her face on the screen. "I don't think you did," she whispered. Silence filled the space between them, heavy and unyielding. He thought about the nights he had spent replaying everything, trying to find the moment where it all went wrong, the countless versions of the past he had constructed, each one blaming himself in a different way. None of them had looked like this. "I saw you once," she said suddenly. His heart skipped. "It was about 3 years after I left. You were at a cafe, sitting by the window reading something. You looked okay, not happy, But not broken either. He frowned. He had no memory of that. But then again, he wouldn't have noticed her if she had been hiding in the crowd. "I wanted to come in," she admitted. "I even stood at the door for a while. But then I realized I didn't have the right anymore. I had given that up." Her eyes glistened, so I walked away again. Something twisted inside him, a strange mixture of anger and something softer, something dangerously close to longing. "You deserve better than the way I left," she said. "You deserved honesty. You deserved a chance to understand. And I took that from you." He exhaled slowly. "Yes, she had. But that's not why I'm making this video," she added. A new tension settled in his chest. "About a year ago, I found out I was sick. The room seemed to fall silent in a way that felt unnatural, like the world itself had paused to listen." He sat up straighter. "It's complicated," she said, choosing her words carefully. "And I don't want to turn this into something dramatic. That's not the point. The point is, it made me think about everything I've avoided, everything I left unfinished." His grip on the phone tightened again. "And you were at the center of all of it." He looked away, staring at the blank wall across the room. Part of him wanted to shut it off, to refuse this new layer of reality she was introducing. It was easier when the past stayed buried. Easier when people remained as they were, frozen in memory. But life didn't work like that. "I don't know how much time I have," she said quietly. "Maybe years, maybe less. But for the first time in a long time, I don't want to run anymore." He looked back at the screen. "I want to be honest," she continued. "Even if it's too late, even if it doesn't change anything." A tear slid down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. "I loved you," she said. Not in a confused, overwhelming, suffocating way, but in a real way, a deep, steady way that I didn't understand back then. His vision blurred. "And I think a part of me always will." The words lingered in the air, fragile and irreversible. "I'm not asking for anything," she added quickly. "I'm not expecting you to forgive me, or to reach out, or to feel anything at all." He almost laughed at that. "Feel anything at all? As if that were possible." "I just needed you to know the truth," she said, "because you deserved that much, even if it comes 10 years too late." The video began to fade, the image dimming slowly. "I hope you're happy," she whispered. And then it ended. The screen went dark. For a long time he didn't move. The room felt different now, heavier, fuller, as if her presence had lingered even after. The video was gone. He set the phone down carefully, like it was something fragile. 10 years. 10 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of quiet, persistent ache. And now, in a few minutes, everything had shifted. Not fixed, not erased, but understood. He stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The city outside was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of distant lights. People were still out there, living their lives unaware of the small, seismic change that had just occurred in his. He thought about the boy he had been back then, the way he had loved without hesitation, without fear, the way he had believed that love, if it was real enough, would always be enough. He had lost that version of himself somewhere along the way, or maybe he had just buried it. Her words echoed in his mind. "I don't want to run anymore." Neither did he. He turned back to the table, picking up his phone again. His thumb hovered over the screen, uncertain. What would he even say? After everything, after all this time. There were no perfect words for something like this. No script that could capture the complexity of what he felt. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe it was enough to just begin. He opened a new message, stared at the empty space for a moment, and then, slowly, he started typing. Not with certainty, not with clarity, but with honesty. For the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.